episode of Random Chats with Dade and Jude. I'm Dade.
And I'm Jude.
Welcome. We are talking about a subject today that I think I've just learned. Well, I've not learned that I have more of. Well, it must be it has, but as the years have gone on, I've got more of this. Jude, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about a serious subject, anxiety.
Yeah. How do you like think about anxiety?
I think about anxiety, it's quite an interesting question to start with. I think it's evolved as I've got older. I think anxious thoughts and having anxieties, nervous energy was something I probably had when I was younger, but now my anxious thoughts and my feelings and sensations of anxiety tend to be very different, especially with the introduction of children. So it's kind of evolved over the years.
But also when you said that, I got like flashed back to my school days of where I was dreading going to school because of certain things or certain people, and I used to get, I'm like, I don't want to go. This is not going to be good, and it brought that anxiety.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Because I think for me, when I was telling that moment or sharing that moment, I used to be a competitive swimmer, and so my adrenaline and my
You used to be a competitive swimmer. Did I know?
I don't know whether this one's ever come up into conversation, but yes, I did. I swam from a young age and swam competitively, probably from jumping in a pool at 5 to carrying it on until I was 16, 17, swimming across seas and for a club where we would play or swim rather, within other clubs within the region.
What do you mean you swam across a sea?
No, swum across seas, like we would exchange with other. Yeah, I've done all of them, darling. Did the channel? No, I didn't. I could have gone with that, couldn't I?
Surely this should have come up in our conversations over the years.
But this is why I love what we do, Dave, because every time we do this, we find more and more out about each other, and it's awesome.
Yeah, well, welcome, listeners. Just Jude and I just like bonding and understanding.
Yeah. But hopefully will like it.
But back to anxiety.
Yes. So when I used to swim, I used to get this nervous energy, call it adrenaline, call it your fight or flight, and it would have a really positive effect on my races because, you'd get that nervousness in your stomach and you'd be on the block and the whistle would go or the gun would fire and then off you go. And so in that instance, it was almost a positive thing. But then as I got older, that anxiety kind of manifested into a more fearful feeling whereby I felt very competitive and that I had to win because, I was pretty good at it and I did win a lot of races, and you'd hear the mums going, you got to beat that girl. That's the one you got to beat. And it would put pressure on me to the point where actually the pressure overcame my want to carry on with the swimming. And so I actually gave it up, much to my father's and mother's regret. Because
I know, but it does. It gets a lot of pressure for things. And you think, I've got to do better at this. I've got to build myself up. I also think there's anxiety and there's also nerves, which I do find is slightly different.
Absolutely. And I think
pressure, pressure to perform. Yeah.
And I think that's when when at the beginning of this, I said that, when I was younger, it started there. And then the older you get, it kind of manifests in a different way where it's almost like for me, like a gauge where it starts in your tummy, because, a lot of things do. And then it kind of rises, then it gets into your head. And then that's when you start behaving differently and feeling differently and thinking differently. So that's how my anxiety's kind of fluctuated over the years, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's like also in certain scenarios sometimes, right? Like I know it's always like, because you can go like, when like going back to the nervous thing, I was thinking about, hey, you used to get nervous going to present in meetings and things like that. If you haven't listened to our podcast over Embarrassing Stories, go and check one out because there's a very funny one about my work, about being nervous. And then but that's nervousness. Anxiety is that repeatable kind of event that you kind of get really like stressed about. And I'm going to go through to a definition here. Anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness. It might cause you to sweat, feel restless and tense, and have a rapid heartbeat. It could be a normal reaction to stress. For example, you might feel anxious when faced with a difficult problem at work, before taking a test, or making an important decision.
Yeah, 100%. And it's crazy, isn't it, how you just exemplified. Is that a word? I think it is.
It is now.
Yeah.
It is now.
I think the way that you or illustrated maybe is that over the way that the body reacts to those situations, you know, the hot sweats, the sweaty palms. I used to find sweat in the oddest of places. I could always get it under my nose or on my knees. And you can literally feel the beads of sweat running down you. And again, when you said about standing up and presenting in meetings, oh my God, I was the worst in my 20s at doing that, working for big businesses and having to present. And I was confident in what I was going to say, but put me in front of all of these big CEOs, CFOs, or whatever it may have been. Oh,
Oh, I used to shake. I
yeah.
literally was like, and if you could look at the presentation right now, my hand was like pointing and shaking
Oh,
and sweating profusely.
yeah. And trying to style it
Um,
out, and you just can't because you're literally just
yeah. But
constantly.
now I was very fortunate that I had a very good coach through my 20s as well that helped me change my perspective of that. So that was a good kind of, and I still use it to the day about how I anchor myself before I go and present. Still get some nerves and things like that, but it's not as bad as like
Yeah, and it's definitely having courage in your conviction, isn't it? If you really know what you're talking about and you're given a topic to talk about openly and freely, the words
yeah.
just kind of flow. But it's more when you get those kind of awkward questions, or you open it up to the room and you say, "Does anybody have any questions?" And someone asks you that really awkward question. You go, "Oh God, I'm not prepared for
I
this."
know. Yeah, somebody asked me one of those today at work.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I've just also got some facts here over effects of anxiety on your body. So feeling in your stomach, 100%.
Yeah.
Lightheaded or dizzy. I don't get lightheaded or dizzy. Do I? No. I'm just going through that.
Just checking.
Just checking. Feeling restless, a bit unstable, headaches, backache, faster breathing. Yeah, an irregular heartbeat. I'm not sure it's irregular. I tell you one that's on, like, not on this list, which I'll share, which is, I'm not sure why I'm sharing this, but I will. Sometimes I get that nervous, I don't know if it's a nervous wee or an anxiety wee, and I'm like, right, I've got to, like, I know it's a weird thing to say, but it's just something I've noticed a lot more.
It's
It's,
actually, I don't think it's a weird thing to say at all, because all of those symptoms you've just shared are very close to my heart, because I have a son who suffers with major anxiety, and all of those symptoms are symptoms he suffers from.
yeah,
So, you know, I can completely understand and sympathize with anybody that has anxiety, whether mildly or majorly, because it's just brutal. It eats at you, and it's this big beast that kind of like just consumes your mind, and every single thing that you do, every moment or time of the day, there is a reason for this. You know,
yeah,
my
agree.
son calls his ball of misery.
Mhm.
So he carries this ball of misery around with him, and it can happen at any time of the day,
Yeah,
you know, for any reason, and none of it is necessarily reasonable to
mm,
us, but
yeah,
to that person, that's what they have to deal with and cope with every single day. And those body reactions are really true.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And look, thank you for sharing. And I know that's why we're having a kind of conversation as well, because it can happen to different generations. It happens to us all. I'm sure, I can't say that everybody has some kind of anxiety, but it's at different levels and different things. So I'm just getting a national flood warning on my phone.
Oh gosh. But I think to your point as well, there's one big word that I want to say that has probably triggered a wave globally throughout all generations, but I think some more so than others. And that's our good friend, COVID.
I know, I was just thinking
It's,
that. As soon as you were going there, I'm like, yeah, COVID. I know exactly where you're going.
since COVID came and went, it's just left, well, it's still here, but it's left this huge ball of misery for so many. And I'm only sharing my personal experience. So I am not talking for the masses, and I'm not talking about anybody else's personal journey. You have my deepest sympathies, though, for sure. But since COVID was when it all came to me with my son.
Mhm.
It was the beginning of that, when lockdown happened and we're homeschooling and we start to see these changes, and you got absolutely no idea where they've come from. It's like they literally were born overnight.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I feel that COVID, we didn't know how to deal with the pandemic because we hadn't had one in so long. Everyone was told to go back into a box and be in a box because we don't know what it's going to do. So not only were your life ripped, your foundations are ripped away from you, and you didn't know what to do. What do you mean I can't go out my house? I can't go to the gym. I can't do all these things. And everyone, the whole world got shut down. You were then like this virus that could get you, and you couldn't know, don't know how you're going to get it. You just know it's like you could get it, and then you're just seeing all these. It was just yeah, and I feel we're still not through understanding the impacts of that.
Absolutely not. Well, I can tell you for one, trying to find a therapist for love nor money. I said when COVID was in full swing, I said there's two occupations which people are going to make a mint from, and it was divorce lawyers and mental health professionals.
Yeah.
And, we are still, dealing with the after effects of that, because it's not like it's not like if you fall over and cut yourself and your knee bleeds and you know what to do. There's situations and things that are presented to you as a mother. As I said, I'm sharing my own personal example, and you don't quite understand where it came from, what it actually really is. You problem solve and think, well, it could be a number of things. You become obsessed with it yourself, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. You're talking to people that are supposed to be providing you help, and that's what they're there to do, but they're swamped because they're just inundated. And I think that is the enormity of what happened. And like you said, we still haven't really got to the bottom of it, and we're not necessarily helping the hundreds, thousands, millions of people that were affected by it in this way.
There's no funding. I don't think there's much more for where people are like, hey, let's continue to invest in mental health for people who post the COVID. We've kind of just gone, oh, that's over, just part of life now.
Move on to the next.
Carry on. But there will be people who will have anxiety over getting viruses to begin with, and they can't get sick. And it's then now to have something like that come along as well.
And you know what, on that note as well, at school, when those poor children had to continuously wear those masks, do you know there's still kids that wear the masks?
Is there? Wow.
Yeah, because at school, because they were so accustomed to wearing them, to being told the reasons why they were wearing them, that there are some kids. I have a friend who has a child, and they are now so, this is their security blanket.
Yeah, I can get that. I can get that.
And so that's a perfect example of the long-term effects of it. And it's brutally disturbing and upsetting and sad to see anybody, whether it be a family member or a friend or just somebody down the street, these are big, big issues. And I know from personal experience just how hard and how sad it is for that individual to just get on with life when every single thing gives them fear, or their adrenaline or their cortisol levels, their fight or flight is out. And symptomatically, as a mother, what's that doing to my child's long-term health? Not just mental health, but physical health too. It's a huge subject, and I would welcome anybody that's listening to this, if they've got any, links or help, anything out there, just to share, because this is a real serious subject. And again, one not that we're not going to go all scientifically into, but just from personal experience, because anxiety really does affect all of us in some way or another, I think.
And that's the thing. I've had one that's developed. I'm always happy to share. I've had one that's developed over time. Like COVID is like I've been going through visa processes basically most of my life. I might be just a bit addicted to going through visa process. Like moving to Australia, going through permanent residency, going through citizenship, and then trying to get to America. But it's all the process of, well, somebody else is making a decision on my life. They don't understand my life. They're making it on a bit of paper, and I can give references and all things like that, but they're not taking it in to account. And that was like the beginning. And then when it was starting to get to like citizenship and things like that, what if they say no? What's my life going to be? And then moving to America, I remember moving here took me a long time due to COVID. So moving to LA from Sydney, Australia, it's like I couldn't get out of Australia because COVID was happening. So I had to wait for a year. Like, and talking about mental health impacts, this is a perfect example. That I waited for a year, and because I had so much drive and confidence in I will get here eventually, I just had to keep resilient and keep going. But that process of waiting to try and get my visa, because they kept shutting the visa office in Sydney, kept moving the goalposts. It then created this big event and things like that. So when I finally got here, great, I'm here. And then we had to start the process again. All of this anxiety was just like, coming at me. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is going to be complicated. This is my life again. And it just is, it's just one of those things. I have a friend who goes through something similar at the same time, or goes through the visa processes, and we just talk to each other just to be able to support each other. Because
You know, it was as you were saying that, I was just thinking how tough that must have been, not only in the way that you've explained, but also in the fact that you did this, you moved yourself from one country to another. You know, you did it on your own. So having that moment of, you know, when you're feeling it and you just want to be able to share that with someone, you don't necessarily have anybody right there next to you to share it with. So it was lovely to hear you just say that you had a friend that was going through it at exactly the
yeah,
same time, because that must have been tremendously beneficial to you both to be able to have that moment of, I just need to vent to somebody that's going to get it, because these are my worries and they're probably not realistic worries, but I'm really worried, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah,
We're visa buddies because we understand the anxiety that comes with the whole process.
yeah.
And that's the thing. Like even going to the embassies and things like that, which I didn't know I had to do. So there's a last minute change, and they said, yes, of course you've got to leave the country. So I flew to London, and then I had to wait, and then
Oh
they
God,
assessed
Dave,
it,
I
and then
remember
on
that.
a
Oh,
bit like it's just such a process that nobody had explained properly to me. And then I'm like, but you're so like, well, I've got to do this to be able to stay in this country and things like
right.
that. So
It's
uh,
not just like getting an invite to go out for an evening, is it? Have a ticket on the door. This is like everything. It's your home, it's your career,
everything. It's
everything.
everything.
It's a massive deal.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Some people might say I brought it on myself by moving here, but hey.
Yeah, but you know what? You're sharing with us an example of how anxiety has
Yeah, that's the thing.
manifested into
I
you.
will
And it's
always go through it because I love my life here and I love what I'm doing here and the reasons why I'm
yeah.
here. But I've already like gone, end of the year, I've got to renew my visa
Oh,
again.
darling. I
And
feel
I'm
for you.
already like, all right, let's think of some strategies that I can maybe put in place to um not get
Go down that same
as
rabbit
much.
hole.
But like my doctor gave me some Xanax just in case.
Just to
But
calm the nerves.
no, but also he's here on a visa, so he knows the process. He's
Oh,
like, I know
great.
how much it can consume it. And we're not recommending everyone go and get Xanax right now. That was just in my own personal scenario, which I still have them sitting in the cupboard. But he's like, if you need it, because it gets overwhelming.
Yeah,
It gets to a point of constantly thinking about it. You're just kind of consumed in your head, and it's just then starts to create a real, not a nice feeling.
yeah.
And I like the way that you talk about it in the what is it,
The ball of misery.
the ball of misery, because it does become that. It does
Yeah.
become that.
Yeah. And so
So
what do you, on a kind of like, we've obviously talked quite deeply and quite openly about some personal experiences today, but maybe is there anything that you could share that you have found has helped you get through those anxious moments and those anxious thoughts, like meditation, or do you listen to any kind of like soothing meditation apps or anything like that? Do you have, what's your outlet for kind of calming your internal body channel down?
not Xanax, so then I can't say that.
Well, you can. That's option A or B.
No. No, I have to say, as I said, it's still in the cupboard, and I haven't actually taken any. But it was good. It was good to have that as like a safety blanket to be
Yeah.
sure. Like knowing that if need be, if it gets two things. I think for me, exercise is always important. Keeping myself
Mhm.
thinking. Keep the drinking minimal. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't help.
not at all. Especially at our age, it doesn't help at night, does it?
No, it doesn't help at night, but it's one of those. You just kind of really got to look at self-love.
Yeah.
Like, I don't meditate in the same way. I obviously go through different things, and we've spoken about this before. But
Mm.
yeah, for me, it's around making sure you're keeping yourself grounded and don't let yourself, well, make sure you're finding time for yourself to keep this in check.
Yeah.
Like speaking about it as well to people does really help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I put it in the kind of category of shame as well. Not that it's a shameful thing, but like shame is one of those things. If you don't speak about it, it grows. And
It
if you don't
feeds.
speak about anxiety, it grows. So maybe one of my tips is to speak to one of your friends about it, saying what triggers you, what are some of those things? Because I know some of my friends get really anxious in like social situations with big crowds.
Yeah.
That sometimes is now because of COVID, but there's different scenarios where I'm like, I know that I'm like, are you doing okay? And they're like, I mean, like even like small places, like I know like people who get like trapped in lifts. I've been in a lift with somebody who had anxiety and it broke down, and
Oh,
we had to keep talking them through. It's like they're on the way. Don't
yeah.
worry, we have to kind of keep like keeping them because
You have to minimize the fear, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to, because if it, like you said, a shame word or a word that isn't spoken because somehow it makes you a different person to who you are because you have this thing,
Yeah.
you know, the more you talk about it, the more familiar it becomes, and it just becomes a way of life.
Yeah.
I was always very fearful to talk about it with my son because I didn't want to make him feel bad. I didn't want to put a thought into his head that may not have been there. But as time goes on, I know that these thoughts are always with him. So it's all about techniques and tools. And so whereas before I would be nervous and like intrepidatious to actually put it out there, now I'm just very flippant about it and go, are you feeling a bit anxious today? You know, what can we do about that?
Yeah.
Let's use some of the tools and the tips that we've learned through therapy. Let's do some breathing. I've done so much. I've had such a wonderful bonding time with my child over this really horrible situation that he has to navigate daily, because we've connected in a way that I really never thought I would. And so we do breathing, we sit down and we breathe together, we kind of meditate, but you know, it's not the serious levels of meditation. But I'm so happy and proud of him, because if he's learning these things now at the young age that he is, these are tools that he can carry through. And whenever he gets that feeling in a situation that he may not yet know or may not yet be aware of is going to come his way, he can then adapt and use those tools to help him get through it. So we have to find a positive
Of
in
course.
a very, very negative situation that affects so many.
I think as well, when you were talking, it made me just go, is that it's evolved over time, our understanding of it. I think it was easy just to dismiss it like some generations ago. It's just like, oh, stop being so silly, stop being so, and it's like, no, I'm actually have a fear of this. Like obviously there's also fear, which we actually haven't covered. We can talk about fear at some point, but it's that now we do have to kind of change the conversation. And if you listen to anything, we would say, like, so both Jude and I would be like, talk to somebody you trust about what triggers you, what scenarios, and how it manifests, and how to also support you through that. I think that's it's not like I can fix you, like never offer, hey, I'll help and things like that. Ask how can I support you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because some people are very much just leave me be, I'm okay. And that's the thing, okay, good. My natural response in scenarios is to lean in, but I don't want that to add to your anxiety.
Yeah.
Stop asking questions, leave me alone. I'm okay. Like, what does that level of support look like? And let them articulate that back to you.
Because it's always good to talk, and it's always good. What's the saying? A problem shared is a problem halved. And like you said, we're not your friends, your teachers, your peers, whoever it may be, parents. We're not here to fix the issues. Unfortunately, anxiety is one of those things that you have to do independently on your own. There's no way that you can get around it. You're going to have to find a way when the moment's right, when you've just had enough of constantly feeling anxious. One day you're going to step up and go, I've had enough, and now I'm going to do something about it and try something different to try to make a positive change so I can live happily, you know, and that's where you start. Yeah.
And I think that's where we'll end.
Very well wrapped up.
Very well poetic there. Look, I hope you got a lot from that conversation. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it was really depth. There's a lot of depth to it, but also a lot of kind of positivity over what you can do to support yourself. Make sure if you do need to talk to anyone, please do. But this has been another random chat with Dade. I'm Dade.
And I'm Jude.
And Jude. I forgot the update. Anyway, we will see you soon on another episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.